and we are live with a very special edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson. Andrew, I think for the first time in our show's history, we're going to do a super show in terms of football. Not only will we be talking about this past week's college football slate, we will also go into the NFL slate. A wild weekend for sure. A lot went down in both college and professional. And now we go into their respective weeks, looking to see how closer we get to determining who will be not only in the college football playoff for the college football, but maybe we're still trying to figure out, as we keep saying a lot for this entire NFL season, who are the best teams in the NFL. And I think this past Sunday really did not make it any clearer, in my opinion.
A little bit. I think it gave us some clarity for one team, which we'll just kind of glance over. We won't really talk about much. Yeah. Kind of gives it there's nothing really to talk about to see how, unless you talk about how much they improved. So we don't have to go into that now, and that's later in the show, probably the last 40 minutes of show or so. So let's go right into our Week 11 recap for college football, though.
Yeah, we'll go into Week 11, and it was a wild Week 11. I mean, we had an earlier game in the week that we thought Louisville was going to lose to Virginia. They were able to come back and save their championship hopes in the ACC. We'll talk about not only the college football polls, but we'll also talk about the certain championship games in terms of conferences. But one big conference in particular was the Big Ten, and that was on great display this week as we saw a top 10 matchup between number 3 Michigan going into Happy Valley to take on number 10 Penn State. Michigan's first game without Jim Harbaugh after he got suspended. He'll now be out for the rest of the regular season, so that's key for Michigan because they have to still play Ohio State at the end of the year, and now they won't have him for that game. So their first game without him going into Happy Valley, and they did what they had to do in this game. J.J. McCarthy did not look great. I mean, he didn't really have to throw the ball as much because Michigan was able to run the ball for 227 yards as a team. Their defense did a great job. They forced Penn State to make many mistakes. It even led to Penn State making an offensive coordinator change as of this past week. And Michigan stays undefeated on the season with a 24-15 win over the Nittany Lions. They now go to 10-0, 2 games left in the year. And of course, as I mentioned, they won looming game with Ohio State.
Now, you're going to mention J.J. McCarthy. Michigan had stated, or some players after the game ended, said they chose not to pass.
Right.
And here's the crazy part. He didn't make a pass from 7 minutes on in that second quarter. So for roughly 65% of that game, 60% of that game, they didn't make a single pass because they didn't have to. They knew, Penn State knew exactly what play was, and it was a statement too, because, even though I am an angry St. John's fan, the whole signs stealing scandal is going on right now, and we just lost to Michigan. I still have to come defend them on this.
Yeah,
they just knew that. They just showed you that you could know what play is coming every single time. Like, you knew they were going to run it every single time. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that formation. They would have 10 guys up front and 1 in the back.
Right.
And they just ran it and stuffed it down their face every single time. That's a statement win. It's a statement win over an opponent that gave Ohio State troubles, and it seems like they just manhandled them this entire game.
Now, I think the curious thing is, now remember, as of this recording, we do not know what the college football playoff poll is going to be. As of this recording, we're still 2 hours away from that poll being released, so we're basing this off. Tonight's mushing hour is going to be based off of the AP Top 25 poll that just came out this past week. Won't be as similar to the playoff poll, most likely, but we'll give it that as is may. But other than that, you're right. This is a big statement win for Michigan. A lot of people have been doubting them all season because of their strength of schedule. They finally beat a top 10 team and their best win by far in the season. Now it's curious to see where they get ranked going into this week. I believe, if I had to think, I don't see them really moving up as much. Maybe they go to number 2, but I don't see them dropping Ohio State or Georgia. So I think Michigan still is in firm position to stay number 3, and they have a great opportunity to make the college football playoff if they could beat Ohio State.
Absolutely, and this is a statement for Michigan, and I think they should be number 1 in the poll after this. That's my opinion, though.
You say that. I think the team that we're going to talk about next should be the number 1 team in the country after what they did this past weekend. That being Georgia, the defending 2-time national champions, going for that 3-peat this season. Maybe their best game of all this entire season. A drubbing of number 9 Ole Miss, 52-17 at home to go to now 10-0 on the season. They just would dominate this entire game. Carson Beck is now finally starting to emerge as a really good quarterback for this team. They forced Jackson Dart to make mistakes, forced him to get taken out of the game. Ole Miss, just a team that's known for their offense, had nothing going offensively. Georgia was able to run the football as well. Just an all-out great performance. They had 300 passing yards, 300 rushing yards. That's 600 yards of offense right there from this team. That's an unbelievable game plan from this Bulldogs team. In my opinion, they should be the number one team going into the country going into this week.
This is another week where Georgia could have stopped scoring at halftime and they would have won.
Yep.
It's crazy that every single time one of these teams come up, like whether it's Florida, which I know Florida wasn't a ranked opponent for not anything special, but they're still a decent football team. They're still an upper echelon team in a lot of our conferences. But this was an absolute statement win against Ole Miss. It's like they were playing two different sports. It's like the guys on Ole Miss, this is the first time they ever played football.
Right. Yeah, I think now for Georgia, I mean, they're having so much confidence going on this season. By far, a huge game coming up this weekend on the road. And then they play Alabama for the championship game in the SEC. It's now determined those two teams will play in the SEC championship game on December 2nd. And it's going to all come down to that game. Not only for Georgia, but for Alabama to make the college football playoff.
So here's going to be my question for you. We're assuming that they're going to lose, that they're going to win out. They're going to play, they're going to beat Tennessee, they're going to beat Georgia Tech. Now, here's the doomsday scenario. What if Alabama loses to Auburn and then they beat Georgia? Does Georgia still deserve to make the college football playoffs? I think they do, but it opens the dialogue. That's the question I have.
I think the biggest question is going to be what are the teams around Georgia going to be like going? I
agree because I know we've spoken about this before.
Yeah,
at least two teams in the Pac-12 have to go. One team probably from the Big 12 has to go. One team from the ACC, that being Louisville and Florida State, have to go. So there's going to be a lot of teams around them that are going to have to fall just because not based off, we think they're going to lose. Like, no, one of these teams or multiple or a couple of these teams have to lose. So that's going to be the interesting part.
We don't know how the season's going to end. Louisville could, we have talked about a couple of times, they could make that case, even though they almost lost this past week. They're in line to play for the ACC championship game, and they would be playing Florida State. And obviously, in that scenario, if Louisville beats Florida State, you have to consider the Cardinals to be in that college football playoff. Now, they haven't clinched a spot in the championship game yet. They can clinch it this upcoming weekend if they defeat the Miami Hurricanes. We'll talk about that game later on in the mushing hour. But that scenario is really tough because if Georgia loses to Alabama, then it creates a dynamo effect. What happens after that? Or domino effect, excuse me. Michigan, Ohio State, we know how to play each other. Washington and Oregon are destined to play each other again in the Pac-12 championship game unless something happens this upcoming weekend. If Oregon State beats Washington, that could create a lot more chaos than even we could even imagine. So that's another thing to talk about. And we still have the opportunity with maybe someone else surprising us at the end of the day. If Texas loses in the Big 12 championship game, who knows what happens with that? Because then Texas would be the automatic team to get in if they just went out and win the Big 12 title game. But if they lose the Big 12 title game or even a game beforehand, then you're talking about a lot more teams even in the conversation that we're not even talking about right now.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about how many different possibilities there are, but we'll leave that up to the imagination because there's probably a million different scenarios right now. And we can get into our next game. And we're going to go back to the Pac-12 now. I know we mentioned them earlier. Washington hanging on by a thread versus Utah. I knew it was going to be a close game, but I didn't think they'd pull it off.
They were losing at half.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Washington seems to have they're kind of like Florida State a little bit, where they played down the competition. I realize that Utah is one of the better teams in the country, but Utah hasn't. I think their ranking isn't warranted.
Well, they are they have won the Pac-12 the last 2 years in their defense, but I agree. I think it's been an up and down year for them. I mean, I think injuries at quarterback have certainly played a play for this Utah team. The defense has been very up and down, so you can't really get a gauge of what they are. But to their credit, they put up a fight in this one with Washington, and they really gave them a run for their money. And there was a good, strong case for Washington to potentially lose this game. But Michael Penix and company did their work. They were able to hold on. They did not allow a point in the second half to Utah for allowing all 28 in the first half. And now they're 10-0. The season's still not over for them because they still have a huge game this upcoming weekend, and they play Washington State. They still haven't clinched a spot I want to say they haven't still clinched a spot in the Pac-12 title game.
They have not.
So there's still a chance maybe they miss out. I'd severely doubt it's likely going to happen, but I'm trying to think of my math overall because they're 7-0 right now. I don't think Arizona can do anything. I think if Oregon State beats Washington this week and then Washington loses again and Oregon State wins their last game against Oregon, then you have a three-way tie for the top of the Pac-12 and determining who those final two teams are going to be. It would obviously be Oregon State being one of them, and then the other team I think would be Washington. So
I think Oregon State will punch their ticket this weekend, though.
I know you believe that. I know
I'm a firm believer in that, and maybe not punch it, but they still have to. They would have to technically beat Oregon the next week, but I think they could be on their way to punching it this weekend.
Yeah, so there's still a lot to talk about in the Pac-12 because you have another big game upcoming this weekend with that conference. We saw Oregon handle work; they were able to hold on against USC this past week, so they are in a good spot right now to make that championship game. But in another conference that we'll go to, the Big 12, that had a big time shakeup this past weekend, Andrew. We thought going into the week that it looked like Texas and Oklahoma State were going to be those two teams to play in the Big 12 championship game. Now, Texas, they had a bit of a scare against TCU. They were able to hold on and get the win. However, for Oklahoma State and Kansas, they both suffered bad defeats, and now we're back to square one of trying to figure out who is going to be playing for this Big 12 championship game. Right now, it's still Texas and Oklahoma State, but now the Oklahoma Sooners are right back into the picture after they lost to this Oklahoma State team. So now, one Cowboys loss puts Oklahoma at another chance to get a rematch with Texas.
It's crazy to see that, just as they kind of pull you out, they suck you back in. And can you imagine Oklahoma State has the inside track? They give up 45 points to UCF. Now, remember,
is not having a good year at all.
UCF was one of those great mid-major programs for the longest time, and I believe that they deserve to make the playoffs and that Alabama feared them a couple of years ago, and I will take that to my grave. However, this is not the UCF of 4 or 5 years ago. This is modern day UCF. They don't have the same head coach. They've had a lot of roster turnover.
I'm sorry, not Gene Chizik, Gus Malzahn. Confused the Auburn coaches.
Yeah, so Oklahoma State, after having that big upset in Oklahoma, or against Oklahoma last week, I should say, they come up flat this week. And who do you think is going to actually make the Big 12 title game at this point? Because it's kind of wide open now.
Well, it's kind of funny because Texas plays Iowa State this week. And Iowa State, believe it or not, is 5-2 in conference play. So they actually have a chance as well to play for the Big 12 title game. And they could create utter chaos if they beat Texas. Because not only would Texas be out of the college football playoff race, they might be out of the entire Big 12 title race. So I think it's still, determining for this entire conference. I think Texas will handle business this week. Kansas State has a good opportunity, especially if they can beat Kansas this week. But I don't know. I think we're in the spot where, in my opinion, if I had to think, I think we're going to have a rematch between Oklahoma and Texas again.
That would be absolutely crazy to see this rematch after all this drama. But it would be the most Texas thing ever after being back for the entire year.
But I think
trip and fall at the finish line.
But I think if you're Texas, I think you want that to happen because it's your only loss of the season. You want to rectify that loss, and especially if it's a chance to punch your ticket into the college football playoff. I think Texas would be, jumping at the bit to be facing Oklahoma for the Big 12 title game. So
I'm sure they would love to face him, but is it going to happen though? That's my question.
I think it's tough because you have a lot of teams buying for that bid. I think the Kansas City and Kansas game will tell a lot. If Kansas beats Kansas State, then Oklahoma's in a better spot than they were going into the week. If Kansas State wins, then that creates a team that we can look at and say, hey, they have a great opportunity. Oklahoma State, in my opinion, after this bad loss, now they go to Houston. I don't know. That's good. That won't be an easy road game for them. So I think they're in a little bit of danger spot again because they were at UCF this past week and it didn't work out, obviously. So I think the Big 12 right now, I think it's Texas and it's up for grabs for that second spot.
I completely agree with you. And before we head into the first edition of our Mushing Hour, we have to talk about some major college football news.
It's huge.
After receiving a $160 million check from their boosters at the halftime game this weekend, Texas A&M has fired Jimbo Fisher, as rumored for the majority of the season. They were going to fire him this season if he did not perform. I've said this multiple times. I don't think this is a good firing. Not only do they owe him $75 billion over the next decade or so, but you also fired the man after not having his quarterback for the entire season, and he's actually stringing together a decent season with his backup quarterback. Texas A&M may finish 8-4 this season with a backup quarterback, which would be a hell of an improvement from last year. We all know the offense has improved, so the timing on this is suspect. But I will say it was very cold of them, and cold meaning I can't believe they actually got away with this. They flexed the check they got from their donors at halftime, and then they fired the man the next day. I thought that was unbelievably petty, and I'm kind of all for it.
Well, listen, Jimbo's getting paid a lot of money now to sit on the couch and just watch this. This Texas A&M.
What did Coach say?
What did Coach
say?
Yeah. Oh, I don't remember off the top of my head. I know what
he pretty much said when he was getting bought out for $17 million, he pretty much jumped at the bit and said, "Okay, how long do you want me to sit there for?"
Right.
Like I have to listen. If you had to, look, I would glad you could fire me and pay me to sit on my couch for $75 million for the next decade. I would love that opportunity.
Yeah, of course.
Any aspiring ads out there to waste money. I mean, listen, you can call me up. You know how to get in contact with me. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think the biggest question I'm going to ask you now is who do you think goes to Texas A&M to be the new coach?
Have you seen the latest rumors?
I have seen a bunch of rumors.
Latest rumors, it's going to be Urban Meyer.
I've seen Urban Meyer. I've seen Dan Lanning from Oregon. I've also seen Deion Sanders. I don't know.
I don't know about Deion Sanders. That's a little suspect to me.
The current Duke head coach that I have heard also, who's a former Jimbo Fisher assistant, is also a possibility. I don't think it will be Deion either.
I don't think they'd be. No offense to Deion, I don't think he's ready for the SEC.
No,
yet.
I think give him another. I think he needs to figure. He
needs to learn how to coach a defense.
They're going back to the Big 12 next year, also for Colorado. So I think let him try to build something there first before he.
I'm gonna let him cook.
Goes out somewhere else. If Dan Lanning were to leave Oregon, that would be interesting because
he's already denied it.
I know,
but again, that means nothing at this stage of life.
Because they're going to the Big Ten next season, and if he were to do that, and he leaves for the SEC, then Oregon could be in maybe for some rough years especially because that Big Ten is going to be very tough to win right now. It's shaping up to be a very good conference next season.
Absolutely, and only time will tell how elite this conference actually will be, though.
But now time's going to tell for the latest edition of our college football mushing hour, the first mushing hour of this episode. We'll have another one later on in a couple of minutes. Week 12 of the college football season. We're almost near the end, Andrew. 3 more weeks after this week coming up. We have a couple of games on the slate. Not the craziest games. There could be some upset alerts, though, I will say that. But for the viewers at home, or the listeners at home, I should say, what does the mushing hour entail?
Well, it's kind of a play on the witching hour from Red Zone and Scott Hansen, where winners become losses and losses become wins. Because when we agree on something, it's a mush. Last week, we had a mush. It was the Bears -4. We both agreed on that. And it was
the Bears won by 3 points. Bad beat.
Very seldomly do we, when we agree, we tend to it tends to cover. It's been happening pretty often now. It's happened with the under in the Michigan-Penn State game, the USC +15.
We pretty much
49ers -3. It happens sometimes, but more often than not, when we tend to agree, please fade us. Because that means we're both kind of feeding off each other's stupidity, and you need to come and mush us. So, with that being said,
I will say, though, we have been really good the last couple of weeks when it comes to our picks. So
we have been red hot. So we've been red hot so far. Nick
which means this week we're guaranteed to be cold. But
I went 6-1 last week. You went 4-4. That is a combined 10-5. So hey, if you can win 66% of your picks, that's a great week.
Yeah,
55% is just going above average, or just it's profitable at these picks. But 66% is ridiculous. So that being said, we have our first game of this week's edition of the Mushing Hour. We have number 9 Louisville on the road going to Miami to take on the Hurricanes. Louisville on the road -1 favorites, and the over/under slate at 46.5. Give me Louisville to cover. Louisville -1. I think they're going to win by at least a point. So give me Louisville -1. the magic doesn't end here. Miami kind of has a Swiss cheese defense. They kind of peaked in week 2. So give me Louisville.
Now, keep in mind, we talked about the implications for this game earlier. If Louisville wins, they're in the ACC championship game. They will play Florida State for that title game. If they lose, they will open the door for a team like North Carolina to get in that championship game. And I think this is going to be a tough game for them. They just had a close encounter with a Virginia team that hasn't had a good season, and now they're going into Miami. And Miami, to their credit, put up a good fight this past weekend with Florida State. I think this will be a close game. I'm going to go over the over for this one. I don't really like the spread. I'm kind of leaning towards Miami if I had to pick between the two. I think Miami can actually pull this one out, but I'm going to go with the over. I agree with you. Miami's defense has not been great. Louisville just gave up a ton of points last week to Virginia, so I like these two teams to score.
Okay, the second game we have the Sam Hartman Bowl. Wake Forest on the road at number 20 Notre Dame. Notre Dame at home, a whopping 24.5 point favorite. 46.5 is the slated over under. The only reason why we have this game on here is
Sam Hartman Bowl.
because it's for Sam Hartman. His old team, Wake Forest, where he grew and developed as a quarterback, versus the team he left for greener pastures and turned up being worse than his team last year.
Yikes.
But who am I to judge? Alrighty, then. So I'm going to take.
There.
With that being said, I'm taking Wake Forest plus 24.5. I still think they're going to lose by 2 touchdowns, but his team will have a lot of fight to show him what they missed. You don't think those DBs in practice that used to play with him all the time want to pick him off in a real game? I think they want to. So give me Wake Forest to cover, plus 24.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the opposite. I'm going to take Notre Dame plus 24, minus 24.5, I should say. I think Sam Hartman's going to have some extra motivation in this one. And Wake Forest has not looked good this season at all. They are at the bottom of the ACC. Notre Dame still technically trying to fight for a New Year's Six bowl. Irish win this one pretty big.
Oh, come on. You really believe that? Well, I mean, it's probably going to happen. But anyways.
They probably won't. Notre Dame has burned me every time I pick them this season, so they probably won't. But who am I to judge, as you said?
Okay, with that being said, we have our next game, number 22, UNC, on the road going down the state, or going across state lines, take on Clemson. Clemson at home, minus 6.5 point favorites. 58.5 is the slated over under. Give me UNC plus 6.5. Clemson hasn't been that good this season. UNC tends to win when it doesn't matter anymore, and if their season's already kind of done. For regional supremacy and recruiting bragging rights going forward, give me UNC to cover here. Don't know if they win, but they're going to cover. So give me UNC plus 6.5.
Well, UNC, remember, they still have a chance to make the ACC title game. If Louisville loses this week and they win, then they're only a half game back for that ACC championship game. And then they have to be North Carolina State in the final week. Now, I'm not sure what the tiebreaker would be, but I'm assuming if North Carolina is still alive in the championship race, then North Carolina has that tiebreaker over Louisville. So I think the Tar Heels have a bunch to play for. I'm going to have our first mush of the day. I'm going to take UNC plus 6.5. I don't know if they win the game, but even if they do lose, I feel like they're going to lose by a field goal. But I think they win this one.
Alrighty, then. There's our mush. The next game we have probably the most important game of the week. We have number 5 Washington going on the road to, again, cross state lines, take on number 10 Oregon State. Both these teams playing for an opportunity for the Pac-12 title game. Oregon State at home, minus 2.5 point favorites, slated over under at 63.5. Give me Oregon State money line. They're my favorites to win the Pac-12. I've said this since the beginning of the season when they're like plus 8,000. They still got a real shot. They got to win this week and Oregon, then win the title game. Got to go with my gut here. Give me Oregon State to win at home. So give me Oregon State money line here. I'm not going to take the points, but give me money line.
I'll say this. If that were all to happen, if they beat Washington, they beat Oregon, they win the Pac-12 title game against probably Washington again. And there's a lot of stuff in the chaos that happens with these next couple of weeks when it comes to championship week. You could make the case Oregon State maybe makes the college football playoff. You could make that case.
I love chaos.
However, I'm not going to go with the chaos this week. I'm going to go with Washington plus 2.5. I think they win this game outright. I just think on paper they are the better team than Oregon State. But I'm not willing to take the money line because I feel like Oregon State will give them a run for their money.
Alrighty, Vans. That brings us to our next game. We have the Battle of the State of Kansas. We have number 23 Kansas State going in-state line to take on the University of Kansas at home. Kansas State minus 8-point favorites, slated over unders 56.5. Give me Kansas, regular Kansas, not Kansas State, +8 here. Felt like they got caught their pants down against Texas Tech last week in that embarrassing loss. Not gonna happen again. They're gonna fight for regional supremacy. This is their time to shine. So give me Kansas at least to cover here. Give me Kansas +8.
Yeah, you talked about that game with Texas Tech. Kansas offense just looked really bad in that one. They were still alive for the Big 12 championship game. They pretty much look like they're out of the race now with that third loss in conference play. Kansas State still has a great opportunity to make the conference championship game if they win this one and then they get some help along the way. I think this will be a nice game between the two. I think it will come down to the wire. I'm going to go with the over. It's a Big 12 game. You expect a lot of offense in this one. I expect it again. So give me the over in Kansas State in Kansas.
Alrighty then. Our next game, we have two more games left. We have number 16 Utah going on the road, some Pac-12 action, going on the road to take on number 19 Arizona. Arizona at home, minus 1-point favorites, and the over-under slated at 44.5. This is a tough one. This is one game I'm really not sure of. I know that Arizona's had some dogfights. I know Utah's had some dogfights. So that gets me to thinking I should take the over for this game. So give me over 44.5. Okay. 44.5 for a Pac-12 game is a little bit too low for me.
This is tough because you could still make the case Arizona could make the Pac-12 championship game as well. If they win this week and then win their final week, and then Oregon or Washington loses out, then the Wildcats are in. They have played some really good football the last couple of weeks. Probably the hottest team of all college football in terms of just where they started and how now they are. I think because of the momentum they have currently going, I'm going to take Arizona money line in this one. I think the Wildcats are playing with good money. I think they give Utah a fight, and I think they win this one.
Alrighty then. With that being said, we have our final game approaching us, which we have some SEC action. We have number 1 Georgia going on the road to take on number 1 20 seed. Georgia on the road, 10-point favorites, 58.5 is the slated over-under. To just give Georgia 10 points after the last couple weeks is disrespectful. They're going to absolutely smoke Tennessee. Give me Georgia minus 10 to cover. It's not even going to be close.
Well, we saw what happened with Tennessee this past week. They got beat down by Missouri 36-7. And Tennessee still had an outside chance of making the SEC championship game if they won that game. And they were able to win this game, obviously. I agree with you. I think Georgia's just playing really too good right now. I'm not willing to take the team across from them right now in terms of point spread because I did that with Ole Miss last week, and that burned me to all hell. So I got the Dogs winning this one minus 10 as well. That's our second mush. And I think they're the best team in the country right now, in my opinion. So I think they just keep rolling, and they are in a good position to win their third straight national championship.
Alrighty then. Now, before we go into our NFL segment, before we wrap up college football, do you have anything else to say regarding this college football week so far?
I think we had an interesting week in Week 11. I think Week 12, we'll have to see how the college football playoff poll comes out and what the committee is thinking when it comes to that. I don't think there will be much shakeup. I think you'll see Louisville enter the top 10. I think Oregon State might enter the top 10 just because of the impact of their matchup this upcoming weekend. Missouri could also make a case because they had a really good time showing against Tennessee. But this is a big week in terms of there could be some upsets that could really impact the entire slate. If Washington loses, then that might be it for them. If Louisville loses, that's certainly done for them and any dark horse opportunity for them to make the college football playoff. And then you're looking at what happens with the rest of the conference. I mean, in terms of also where these conference championship games are going to go. We still have no idea other than the SEC championship game who's going to play in these Power 5 title games.
Well said. And with that being said, let's go on to our NFL Week 10 recap. We had a crazy Week 10. Like I said, there's one team which I think has really emerged because they really showed, I don't want to say intra-divisional supremacy, but man, it was an ugly beatdown for this team, which I think is emerging as one of the favorites.
Yeah, and we'll talk about them in a little bit because I know exactly who you're talking about now at this rate, and you've mentioned them a couple times the last couple of weeks. So let's just face facts. We went Thursday. We had a not a great game between the Bears and the Panthers. Bears won 16-13. The Panthers missed the game tying field goal at the end. So not really much to talk about that game. We'll go into Sunday's slate because Sunday brought a lot of good time action. And I think one of the big things that we saw was, in my opinion, CJ Stroud right now is looking unbelievable. The Texans almost blow it at the end of the game against the Bengals. They had a 10-point lead. Bengals will tie the game. But the Texans go down the field, kick a game-winning field goal, and they beat the Bengals on the road 30-27. Don't look now, but Houston right now is 5-4 in the season. They're in a good spot to potentially make the postseason this year. It's been a really good year one for DeMeco Ryans and company.
Absolutely. And I can't believe we're saying this, but is he going to get. He's at least getting MVP consideration, right?
He has to. He has to.
I think he has to. I mean, I don't agree with it, but he has to. I've never seen. When's the last time we saw a rookie like this come out and just lead a team like this? I don't think we've seen this out of a rookie quarterback in the longest time.
I try to think of what happened with Andrew Luck's rookie season because I think the Colts did make the postseason that year. I don't think he got MVP consideration, from my knowledge, but he's putting.
He also had some lofty expectations to fill too with Peyton.
Right, exactly. They were you're replacing a legend in Indy, and to Andrew Luck's credit, the Colts, they were in a train wreck going into that season, and to his credit, he did a great job getting them. I believe they got to the playoffs that season, and they did. They were 11-5, so he had a really good rookie year. The Texans, don't look now. Not only could they maybe make the playoffs, they could win the division. They're one game back of Jacksonville, and they beat Jacksonville earlier this season. So the Texans, a team that we talked about at the beginning of the season, we said, you know what? It's a transitional year. You have a new young quarterback. They're still trying to fix things. Maybe at best you're hoping for 5 to 6 wins. They've already hit 5 wins.
5 wins.
They've already hit that mark. And they really could make a good case to make the postseason this year. They have an interesting game this upcoming weekend with the Cardinals, who just got back Kyler Murray. Murray came back from injury this past week, and they beat the Atlanta Falcons on a last-second field goal. But the Texans, they're looking really good. And just when we thought the Bengals were starting to get some momentum, now they lose this game. They didn't have T. Higgins in this one. They're hopeful to have him back this upcoming week. But they're on a short week because they're going to Baltimore on Thursday to take on the Ravens in a crucial division matchup. In a game that you could consider a must-win for Cincinnati because a loss puts you at 5-5. And with the way the AFC standings are right now, that could really hurt their chances of making the postseason this year.
I will say Cincinnati does control their destiny to a certain extent because they still have a lot of divisional matchups left to play this season. So they do control it to a certain extent here, but they do have to wake up.
And I think another reason why they have to, they're in a dogfight in this entire, not only AFC wildcard race, but even in their own division, they're in a dogfight. Because look what happened this past weekend with the Browns and the Ravens. A game in which Baltimore was controlling most of the way. Baltimore at one point was up by 15
multiple
points.
Touchdowns.
Right, 15-point lead in the third quarter. Then they took a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter after a Gus Edwards touchdown. And the Browns, to their credit, what a comeback. Elijah Moore gets a touchdown to put them within 7. Greg Newsome gets a pick 6 to put them within 1. They missed the extra point off a missed snap. But the Browns get down the field. They kick the game-winning field goal, beat the Ravens on the road, 33-31. Deshaun Watson did get injured in this game. It looks like he's going to be okay. But I talked about it at the beginning of the season. I said the Browns are a sneaky good team because of how good their defense has been. And, you would think with 31 points allowed that's not a really good defensive game. But the Browns' defense is the reason why they got back into this one. They got the pick 6, as I mentioned. They got 3 sacks from Lamar Jackson. And they realistically held the Ravens to 106 rushing yards. And that's actually pretty good for most
That's their bread and butter.
Right. That's really good if you're able to hold the Ravens to that low of a mark.
Lamar usually gets 50 to 60 yards by himself. So they pretty much held the running backs to 50 yards.
Right. Yeah, and now the Browns, they sit here a half game back of first place in the division. The Ravens still, right now, lead the division at 7-3. And we mentioned they have a big showdown with the Bengals this upcoming week. But a huge statement win for Cleveland now, going to 6-3 in the season. They hold a wild card spot as of this week. And They have another big time divisional matchup this upcoming weekend with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are also 6-3 after the win over Green Bay this week.
I don't know what to make of the Ravens. I don't
I
know
don't
if they're
either.
real, if they're good, if they're bad. It seems like they're a lot of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and this is why I can't take, even though this team has 7 wins, I can't take him seriously.
I think we say that every year with Baltimore.
Yeah, it's really a recurring theme, and it's I don't know who you blame at this point. Do you blame Harbaugh? Do you blame Lamar? Do you blame who do
I
you
don't know.
blame in this situation?
I don't know. It used to be what was that guy's name? The offensive coordinator from last season.
I know who you talk about, but
Greg
his name
Roman,
escapes
right?
me. Yes,
Yeah, I think that's what his name was.
he's no longer. He can no longer be your scapegoat.
He's no
So
longer the scapegoat for this team. They have new offensive coordinator, so we'll have to see. But before I know we go into the game that you want to talk about, can we just give Josh Dobbs his flowers for what he did again this week? Another great game.
absolutely.
Got the Vikings their 5th straight win. They're now 6-4 in the season, and they're in a wild card spot right now. And he's playing unbelievable football, and he's got this team in a great opportunity to get back to the postseason this year.
This is such a feel good story of him because we've been over this a bunch of times. Gets drafted, be Big Ben's understudy. That doesn't work out. He's on multiple different teams. I think you said he was on 5 different teams.
5 teams in the last 1 to 2 seasons.
So this is a man who's had to learn multiple playbooks. He's lived in numerous cities, a lot of different OCs, DCs, head coaches, GMs that he has. He's done this whole thing that some players do it once or twice in their entire 10, 15 years in the league, if you're in the league that long. He's done that 4 or 5 times over than a lot of these guys ever do in the span of a year. So you have to give him a lot of credit for that tenacity to just even be in this situation, not only to perform in this situation and excel, but to be in this situation too. And he's never really beat himself up. He's never, said, "Oh, what was me? I keep on, I'm this journeyman. I have to go to all these teams." He's, stuck true to himself, and it's paying dividends right now.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, that first game he gets for the Vikings, that was a game in which he was on the team for maybe 3 days. And he leads into a comeback win over the Falcons, and now finally gets a full week to learn the playbook. Yeah, he didn't even know where his locker was on game day this past Sunday. And they get another win. They're now 5 straight wins. They beat the Saints, who lost Derek Carr to injury in this game. We don't know what the status of him right now. They go into a bye week this week. But the Saints still lead the division, so that's just how telling the NFC South has been this season.
We also had famous Jameis make a comeback this week, too.
Famous Jameis did give them an opportunity. He did throw a late interception that cost them the game, but he did give them a chance to win the game. So that is to his credit. They almost got a nice comeback win in that one. But let's get into the game that you've been wanting to talk about for the past couple minutes, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. Their first game back from the bye week. We had talked about it. They had looked really bad these last couple weeks. A 3-game losing streak going into the bye, and they finally were able to get back Deebo Samuel. First game they had with Chase Young after they traded for him at the trade deadline, and they looked like the San Francisco 49ers team that we saw at the beginning of the season. Complete domination of Jacksonville, 34-3 the final. Trevor Lawrence throwing 2 interceptions, getting sacked 5 times, also lost a fumble. George Kittle had 116 yards and a touchdown. They did break the CMC streak, though. CMC did not score a touchdown, so his 17-game touchdown streak is now officially over. Brock Purdy looked a lot better, though, going into this one. I think the presence of Deebo Samuel being back definitely helps him a lot. But I know you want to get a little bit more into San Francisco, as I believe you think that they are now the best team in the NFL once again.
Listen, I know we have they were missing. They lost a couple of games. Brock Purdy didn't look that good. I still don't think he's that good of a quarterback. It's not really much of a hot take unless you have $10,000 investing in sports cards. Which if you do, I highly advise you to dump it all right now. This is financial advice, by the way. This is financial advice right here.
Usually you tell me it's not financial advice.
Yeah, this is financial advice right here. This is definitely financial advice. Listen, the San Francisco defense, I know Trevor Lawrence hasn't had a strong year. They made him look like a fool. He had 2 picks. He couldn't stay in the pocket. He was getting sacked all day. It looked like that defensive line with Chase Young and Nick Bosa is as good as advertised. And as long as this team stays healthy, they're gonna win this. They're gonna win the Super Bowl. What offensive line? And it's gonna be interesting because I think we'll get to see Niners Eagles later in this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is the only offensive line I think they could stop. I think that's the only O line that could stop this D line.
It's possible. It's possible. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, listen, we saw what happened in the playoffs, so who knows? Um, I can confirm that on December 3rd, the Niners do play the Eagles in Philadelphia.
That's going to be one hell of a game, and I can mark your
I'm looking at the
calendars.
Eagles next. How about the next? I just looked at the Eagles schedule now. Their next couple games are tough.
It's
At
Murder's
Kansas
Row.
City, home against Buffalo, home against San Francisco, at Dallas, at Seattle.
Listen, it's no one
It's
said it's
tough.
going to be easy.
No, I'm hoping to see some L's. No offense to them and any Eagle fans listening. That's not biased at all. And I'm not saying that because my team is 2-8. Anyway,
Hey, your team's also 2-8.
yeah, we're squatting
Sick,
up with
dude.
the 2-8. We'll see you all at the Tank Ball in MetLife in a couple weeks.
I can't wait. That's gonna be phenomenal.
But let's talk about our next game: the Detroit Lions and Los Angeles Chargers. A shootout of all shootouts in this one between these two teams. You had Jared Goff and Justin Herbert throwing for multiple touchdowns. Goff threw for 2, Herbert threw for 4, both over 300 yards passing. The Lions had 200 yards rushing, 116 for David Montgomery, 77 from Jahmyr Gibbs. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a monster game, as well as Keenan Allen, both going for over 150 yards on the touchdown. Keenan had 2. But the Lions get a game-winning field goal at the end, beating the Chargers 41-38 the final. They now go to 7-2 on the season, the second best record in the NFC behind those Philadelphia Eagles. And now for the Chargers, another game in which the defense did not help the offense, who had big numbers, and they now dropped to 4-5. And with the way the AFC picture is currently standing out right now, it doesn't look really highly likely that this team's going to make the postseason this year.
Well, clearly this was Justin Herbert's fault, right? I mean, that's what notable football experts would tell you. Like, clearly, Justin Herbert just has to throw another touchdown, right? He only had 4 touchdowns on the day. I mean, come on, is he even trying out there? He clearly needs to throw 8 touchdowns, because putting up 31 points isn't good enough now.
Yeah, Brandon Staley was supposed to be known for this defensive, knowledge. And
oh wait, you can play defense on the Chargers?
No, you can't.
Wow, I didn't know that.
They've spent all this money on their defense, and it just has not gotten better. It's gotten worse, honestly.
Or how they just got rid of J.C. Jackson after
they got rid of him because they thought they wanted to make him to be the scapegoat, and sure enough, it's not him.
Really? I would have never guessed.
I would have never guessed that either. And maybe it's the head coach that you currently have. I think the Chargers, as soon as possible, gotta get rid of him. Just
listen, we've been saying this for God knows how long.
It's literally a dark cloud on this franchise right now. Because
I don't know what they're doing.
I'm telling you, this is gonna be Philip Rivers 2.0, in which they're gonna have a great quarterback, generational to a lot of people, and they're not gonna be able to do anything with him because of how badly the defense has been around him. This happened a lot of times for Philip Rivers, and they were never able to get to the Super Bowl. They barely got to conference championship games, and Herbert's only been to one playoff game, and that one playoff game was a collapse against the Jaguars. So it's not looking good right now for this franchise.
Well, chin up, Chargers fans, all 7 of you, and Aaron. Maybe one day, maybe you'll fire Brandon Staley, and you'll get your wish, and maybe Herbert can be part of a playoff contender. Just maybe.
We'll have to see. But let's talk about their division rival, the Las Vegas Raiders. They get their second win under Antonio Pierce as they beat the Jets on Sunday Night Football 16-12. A game in which Josh Jacobs, pretty good, 116 yards rushing. The lone touchdown of the game was a Michael Mayer touchdown from Aiden O'Connell. And the Jets had an opportunity to win the game late, but Jack Wilson throws an interception. They had a chance on the final possession of the game. The Hail Mary attempt did not work. And unfortunately for the Jets, they now fall to 4-5. That's now their second straight loss. And a stat that I saw this week that is really concerning for me, Zach Wilson, 5 touchdown passes on the season, right?
Yep.
Josh Dobbs has 5 touchdown passes in 2 games with the Vikings.
Yeah, checks out.
And the Jets, I believe, have scored 1 touchdown, I'm trying to think, in their last 3 games, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that was the Breece Hall touchdown against the Giants. I think that's right. They didn't score a touchdown against the Chargers. They got that touchdown against the Giants. And then They didn't. I don't think they got any offensive touchdowns in the Eagles game. Maybe they got a rushing touchdown at the end. And that was it. They scored two offensive touchdowns in their past
I
four
don't know
games.
what blackmail Zach Wilson has on Robert Saleh, but whatever it is, I promise you it can't be worse than starting him.
They cannot ask for Aaron Rodgers to come back any sooner rather than later.
Aaron Rodgers is literally going to tear off. He's going to need to get his leg amputated. He's going to come back so soon, and we're gonna watch this man like literally disappear on live television.
And he's aiming for a mid-December return. And the Jets, I don't know, by then they're probably going to be out of the playoff race at this point.
Here's the thing: if you're 500 and if Aaron Rodgers is like 50-50 on coming back,
Then you might have a chance.
Like he did this with the Packers a couple years ago, and just out of spite was beating teams, even though he had literally the longest long shot of making the playoffs, which he didn't. But he just came back to kind of just sink above a bunch of other teams' chances and maybe even write his own playoff ticket. So he's done this before in the past, but never on ACL like this.
Right. But I don't know. They're in a bad spot right now, but they're not the only AFC East team that's right now in a bad spot right now. I know you're going to love this game.
The entire division is.
Yeah, the entire division's in a rough spot.
I would actually argue the Patriots are in the best spot.
That's a wild statement at 2-8.
Well, I mean, let's be real. We're going to talk about the Bills in a second here, but is Miami going to do anything this season?
I mean, probably not.
Are the Jets going to do anything this season?
The rate they're going, definitely not.
Are the Bills going to do anything this season?
At the rate they're going, probably not.
And what are the Patriots going to do at the rate they're going?
They're going to be tanking, clearly, and try to maybe get Marvin Harris Jr.
All right, I think that's the best outcome we could hope for right now. But I'll let you continue now.
Embrace the tank. That's how I like to go about it. Let's talk about this game between Denver and Buffalo that happened on Monday night. Buffalo's first play of the game, a run for James Cook, and he fumbles. So that was a good start for them. Denver only got 3 points on it, so they didn't really capitalize as much. But this was another game in which Buffalo had too many mistakes in the first half, and that's been the story for them all season. Josh Allen threw 2 picks in that first half, played a lot better in the second half, to his credit. But man, Buffalo's mishap at the end of the game is a head scratcher for certain. So let's paint a picture. Denver gets a touchdown to take a 21-15 lead. They went for the extra point. It was a botched snap. They had to try to run it. They could not get it. So it was a 6-point game. Gave Buffalo an opportunity to get a touchdown and an extra point to take the lead. That's what Buffalo does. They go down the field in 6 plays. They get a touchdown run from Josh Allen. They take a 22-21 lead with a minute 55 left. Russell Wilson and company, they go down the field. There was a pass interference call on Jerry Jeudy that got them into field goal range. They would run a couple more plays. And remember, they didn't have a timeout when this happened. So they get into field goal range. Russell Wilson takes a knee, and they quickly bring out their field goal unit. The field goal unit runs out, as well as the Bills' special teams unit, to try and block the kick. Will Lutz has to kick it very quickly, and he does. And because of him kicking it that quickly, he misses it. And Buffalo fans are going wild. They thought they've won the game. They just escaped and get their 6th win of the season. But laundry gets thrown on the field. The Bills have 12 men on the field on the kick, and they have to redo the kick.
Would you like to say who it is? Who's on the field?
I don't think it was him, though. That was the 12th man.
It was him. It was him.
I don't know. I don't know if that was.
And I'm just singling out because he's been playing like absolute. He hasn't. Well, I mean, he hasn't played at all.
But
when you see him on the field, you see him on the field, he hasn't been performing. It was Damar Hamlin, everyone. So that was the guy who cost the Bills the game. So,
well, I wouldn't say him. I'd say that's more on coaching because they have to know how many people are out there.
That's right. So who was the scapegoat this week that got fired because of this?
It was the offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. But to be fair, he deserved to get fired.
Oh, just like Leslie Frazier?
Yeah. Well, come on. You can't tell me Ken Dorsey does not need to be fired.
Oh, I know, but him and
Bill's offense has been atrocious this season.
Listen, him and Leslie Frazier both deserve to get fired, right?
Leslie Frazier got fired because of what happened in the Chiefs game. I
agree 100%. But both these guys deserve to get fired, right?
Yeah, I know.
Because of their ineptitude, right?
Yes, I know what you're getting at now.
So who hired both of them?
Sean McDermott does deserve to be in the hot seat. I agree with you. We said it. I
Oh
think we
man,
said it going into the season that
I
Sean
said it last
McDermott.
season too. This man's in the hot seat. He's
I
done nothing
I think
there.
the seat's even more hot than it has been because
He's Brandon Staley levels of incompetent.
that is a really bad loss to end it because of how of the scenario that happens. Now, keep in mind, as we mentioned, Dorsey gets fired. They now named Joe Brady the interim OC. If you remember, Joe Brady was the former offensive coordinator with the Panthers. That didn't really go over too well, but for what he did in college with LSU and the years with Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase, you're hoping maybe they can get a spark like that because they need anything going on offense. The Bills' offense has been anemic. In every game, it seems like their first half offense has been horrible. And they need now a big offensive spark because they play the Jets this coming week. And we saw what happened in week one. Josh Allen had 3 interceptions, and they lost that game on a walk-off punt return in overtime. So they need this game. It's probably the biggest must-win game of the year for Buffalo because a loss puts you at 5-6, and especially to a Jets team that has not been able to score any points as well. Then the Bills' season's pretty much done. And I agree with you. I think Sean McDermott deserves a lot of criticism right now for for a lot of the stuff that's gone wrong this season for the Bills.
I mean, listen, I'll say it again. I think he deserves to get fired. He has shown me nothing for
I
this entire season.
I think we're at the point where he might be getting fired. I don't know if it's going to happen in season, but at the end of the season, I would not be surprised.
Oh, I don't think he should get fired in season. They should
He
at
has
least
to make the
give
playoffs
him.
to save his job, and even then, I don't know if it's going to be enough.
Yeah, they should at least give him the dignity to retire in the off season with grace. Say, oh yeah, it wasn't working
No, he
out.
won't retire.
Well, not retire, but just resign. I should say. Oh yeah, it wasn't working out. Some other team throw a boatload of money at me now.
Hmm. We'll have to see. But any takeaways you have from this game before we go into the Week 11 mushing hour?
Well, not really the game, but I'm just gonna leave as a little food for thought here. All right, gets hired in 2017. Right,
Mm-hmm.
great regular season head coach, wins close to 63% of his games. He is 4-5 in the playoffs in that stretch. He's been there for 7 years now. Does he deserve to stay after this? This is he kind of reminds me a little bit of Andy Reid in Philly. This is what he kind of reminds me of right now. Andy Reid when he was coaching the Eagles.
Super Bowl. I will say in his defense.
Yeah, so I guess he's doing worse than Andy Reid in Philly. That's the benchmark.
He didn't win that Super Bowl, but yeah, he did at least get to a Super Bowl.
That is, I kind of think where we're at. So if you want to have a worse version of Philadelphia, Andy Reid, Buffalo, this is your guy.
I think the best. You know what the funny thing of the offseason is going to be? They're going to give it the scapegoat to the Madden cover because Josh Allen's on the Madden cover. Can't wait for that. I can't wait for that storyline. It's going to happen. I guarantee you it happens.
Can't wait. It's going to be great. You're right. It's 100% going to happen.
Yeah, I can't defend. I love Josh Allen, but I can't defend him how he's playing right now. I mean, he's playing. He's been very Jekyll and Hyde.
Listen, he's famous Jameis of a better PR team. That's what he is right now.
I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, but
I'll talk to you after week 14.
I can't really argue it. Either way, let's go into the week 11 mushing hour. We already mentioned what mushing hour entails, so now let's see how it works for this week's NFL action. Now, I'm on a high right now going to the NFL. I went 7-2 last week, and believe it or not, Johnson, we have the exact same identical record now this season on the overall.
Yeah, we are both
37.
Both 40 and 37.
Can't make that up.
And we all pick different things too, so we're both picking around 52% right now. Not great, but hey, we can improve it this week. Maybe get it back up to 55%.
Hey, listen, from where I started, I was 9 games under 500. I think at one point in this NFL season.
I think I was 12 games over 500, so it's a little upsetting for me. I've been on kind of a cold streak for the last couple of weeks. Hopefully, we're going to kind of reverse that.
The weather's been getting cold here in New York, but I'm getting hot when it comes to my picks. And now, because I said that, I definitely mushed myself. So,
all right, fade Nick this week, everyone.
Absolutely.
Fade him.
All Absolutely.
Right. So that being said, we have the Cincinnati Bengals on the road going into Baltimore. M&T Bank Stadium taking on the Ravens. Baltimore at home, 3.5-point favorites. Over under slated at 46.5. Give me Bengals plus 3.5. One of these teams got to win. It's going to be a dogfight. Give me Bengals to win a close one. I think they'll win outright, but if not, they're going to lose by less than a field goal. So give me the Bengals plus 3.5. I'll take the points since they're being given to me.
I think for the first time in a while, we have probably a really good slate of prime time games this week.
We do.
Thursday night game is good. Sunday night game might not be bad. It doesn't look great on paper, but considering how the two teams have played of late, it might not be terrible. Probably jinx that as well. Monday night game should be great. We'll talk about those games in a little bit. This one should be fun. A divisional matchup between Baltimore and Cincinnati. I think a lot of points are going to be scored. You usually don't say that for a primetime game, but I think we see a lot of points. I'm going to take the over in this one. I took the under last week in the Bengals game, and I really paid for that one. That was one of my two losses, so not going to make that mistake this week. I think we see a nice high-scoring game between Cincinnati and Baltimore.
Alrighty, then that leads us to our second game. Staying inside that AFC North Division, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers going on the road into Cleveland to take on the Browns, who are at home. 3.5-point favorites, and 36.5 is the slated over under. I'm also going to take the underdog in this AFC North matchup. Going to be a dogfight. Give me the same logic behind the Bengals. Steelers seem to find ways to win a game. It may not be pretty. I don't know if Matt Canada has taken a backseat in the play calling, and maybe just putting him on maybe just putting him on the sideline just made him better all of a sudden. But give me Steelers at least to cover here. Give me Steelers plus 3.5.
I'm gonna go the opposite of you. I'm gonna take the Browns minus 3.5. I think for me it comes down to the Steelers find these ways to win, but they do it at home. They haven't really shown much on the road. They have not played a lot of road games this season. And you're going into the dog pound to face a Browns team that has a lot of momentum going right now after that win over Baltimore. I think it's going to come down to who has the better defense out of the two. And for me, I think it's the Browns defense. So I'll take Cleveland minus 3.5.
All right, that brings us to our next game. We have I was going to say Oakland Raiders, but the Las Vegas Raiders going on the road to take on the Miami Dolphins. Miami at home minus 12-point favorites over under slated at 47.5. Miami has not been that good. Miami's been struggling. They seem to can't beat. They can only beat under 500 teams, and when they beat those under 500 teams, it's not in convincing fashion, except if you have the Broncos.
This is a 500 team technically. Their Raiders are 5-5 on the year.
So you're kind of teetering on, okay, what's going to happen here? And with that being said, thank you for pointing that out, Nick. Give me Raiders to cover here plus 12. I think that's too much. Give me Raiders plus 12 here.
Well, my Giants season has gone really poorly. They're 2-8, so I'm living vicariously through Antonio Pierce, the current interim coach for the Raiders, the former Super Bowl champion with the New York Giants. So I want him to succeed. He's gotten. I think the problem for him has been the two teams he's beaten have been really are bad teams. He beat the Giants and the Jets. Now you're facing the Raiders, who have the Dolphins, who have a really, really good offense. I know people criticize Tua and sometimes most of the time, but the biggest thing for me in this game, Devin Achane is back for Miami. He's going to be returning from the IR. I think that provides a huge spark for this offense. I'm going to not take the 12. I'm going to go with Dolphins minus 10. I think the Raiders will try their best to keep it close, but I think Miami just has too much offensive firepower for the Raiders to keep up.
All right, we're going to go into a AFC East divisional matchup here. Talking about the Buffalo Bills, the New York Jets will be going into Orchard Park to take on the Bills this week. Bills at home, minus 7-point favorites, over under slated at 40.5. With that being said, Buffalo, this is your opportunity now. You need to win this game, because if you do not win this game, you have a hell of a schedule coming in front of you that include the Eagles, Chiefs, and I believe the 49ers in the weeks after this. So, Buffalo, win this game or be condemned to a sub-500 season. So, with that being said, give me Buffalo to not only win, but cover. Buffalo minus 7.
You mentioned the Bills schedule. After this week, it's Jets at Philadelphia, at Kansas City, home against Dallas, at the Chargers. The Chargers won't be an easy game, and then they end the year with the Patriots, who they've lost to this season, and then they're at Miami.
Why do I think it was the Niners? It was the Cowboys.
Yeah. I think this is must win for Buffalo. They can't lose this game. If they lose this game, their season's done. Because the way the Jets are playing right now, it's not. I know you lost them early in the season, but it's even worse. I think this is even worse loss if you lose this time around. For me, the play is the under. If you have a Jets game right now on your thing and you see the point total, you're taking the under every game. They have not proven you to score any points. The Bills' offense has also proven to you to not score many points. So I think this will be a low-scoring game. I think Buffalo wins this one, maybe like 20 to like 6. So I don't hate your Buffalo -7 pick.
Alrighty then. The next game we have the Minnesota Vikings going on the road to take on the Denver Broncos, going to Mile High Stadium in Denver. Denver at home -2.5 point favorites, over under slate at 43.5. Give me Vikings +2.5. This Josh Dobbs feel good story is going to continue. Give me Vikings +2.5. I think they're being disrespected here.
Well, in all fairness, think about what Denver's done the last couple of weeks. A big win over the Chiefs, a big win on the road against the Bills, and the Vikings deserve their flowers as well. They won 5 straight games, and I think the biggest thing to note out, Johnson, they might get Justin Jefferson back this week. That's huge for this team, considering that they've won all these games without Justin Jefferson. You get him a primetime game, and keep in mind, we thought this primetime game was going to be really bad a couple weeks ago when you looked at the two teams' records. But now, they've been playing really good. Now it looks like a decent football game. We probably mushed that now. It probably will be a terrible game knowing our luck.
It's going to end 2-0 on a safety.
Yeah, probably. I think we're going to be in for a good one. I think, though, because of where they're playing and because of the altitude, I think the Vikings might struggle in this game. I'm going to go Broncos -2.5.
That's a fair analysis. I could see them easily struggling in this game. That's not too far off. That's fine.
Okay. And the final game of the week, the Andy Reid Bowl.
Oh, man, the Andy Reid Bowl is right. We have the Philadelphia Eagles at the Kansas City Chiefs. So we have Jason Kelce versus Travis Kelce. Mama Kelce doesn't know what to do. Taylor Swift is going to be cheering.
Taylor Swift will definitely be there in person.
Oh, of course. And she's going to be cheering against her best man and in favor of maybe her future husband. Probably not. Alrighty, then. We have Kansas City at home, -3 point favorites, over under slate at 4.5. The Chiefs are a bunch of frauds. Give me Eagles +3. I've said this multiple times. I do not believe in this Chiefs team that they get gifted a lot of games. So give me the Philadelphia Eagles to win the Kelce Bowl.
Well, I'm hoping the Chiefs beat the Eagles for obvious reasons. So for my bias pick of the week, and probably take Johnson's pick before my pick, I'm going to take the Chiefs -3. They come off a bye week. I think they could really use a convincing win to prove to the world that they are still a favorite. And you got to think, this is probably one of the best Monday Night Football games we've had in a long time. You get the Super Bowl rematch on Monday Night Football. I remember a couple years ago we had that Chiefs and Rams game that went for 54-51 final. I'm not saying that's going to be the final of this game, but we could be in for a really good matchup between these two teams. So for my pick, I'm just going to be very biased. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to take the Chiefs -3 to win this one.
Alrighty then. I don't think we had any mushes this time around, so good for us to go mush-free this mushing hour.
Yep. College football one, we had a couple, but for the NFL, we are completely staying away from each other. So it could be good, that could be bad. We don't know yet. But before we wrap up this week's show, the Super Show this week on the All Gas No Break Sports Show, there is some news that you want to talk about, Andrew, that I know you have.
Oh, absolutely. I want to talk about the Boris County Card Show happening in Parsippany, New Jersey this upcoming Saturday. So we had one a couple weeks ago. We're going to have one again this week. So that is in the Embassy Suites, 909 Parsippany Boulevard in Parsippany, New Jersey, 07054 from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Sports cards, Pokemon, memorabilia, and more. Get it in this Saturday. Early access starts at 9 a.m. for $10 per person, and GA starts at 10 a.m. for $5 per person. Going to be around 70 tables. It's a great venue. Parking is right there. You don't have to go crazy looking for anywhere. And there's going to be lots of sports cards available, as well as Pokemon, TCG, Magic the Gathering, whatever you're into. But come by, say hello, and maybe just chat for a little bit. But that's the Morris County Card Show happening this weekend, this Saturday, November 18th.
It should be a fun one this week. We always have fun at these card shows these last couple of weeks,
never
months,
a dull moment.
Years, exactly. There's never a dull moment when it comes to it. So should be a fun one this upcoming weekend. But for us here at the All Gas No Break Sports Show, that's going to do it for this week's edition, as our Super Show is concluded. College football, we go into Week 12. NFL, we go into Week 11. We are getting closer to the end of the regular season for both of these sports. The football season is unfortunately almost coming to an end too. I'm going to be very sad in just a couple months. But nonetheless, we will find out who will be the respective champions sooner rather than later in both college and the professionals. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson with the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.